Thanks everyone for joining us for the second panel session this afternoon. I hope you're all feeling refreshed and energised. Maybe if you're not, just stand up anyway, and let's give all our panellists a clap before we start, and yourselves. This afternoon we're going to be talking about grids, in particular smart grids. So we have three very smart people to talk about them. We're not just going to be talking about techie stuff, although we've got some members of our panel who are well versed in all of that. We're going to be talking about a whole range of things, including what a smart grid is, what it looks like in your own home, and what it might look like on a community scale when a community decides to go off the grid themselves in a very smart way. First up, to talk about and answer all your questions, which we'll have lots of time for after, about grids and networks, we have Mike Swanston. Mike is a power systems engineer.
Yeah, sure. Power's the descriptor, nothing to do with electricity.
Right. Yeah, he's a powerful man with 25 years experience in technical regulatory public affairs. He was Senior Network Manager for Powercore Australia, so that was a prelude to Essential Energy.
No, Powercore's in Victoria.
Sorry.
Yep. But
you worked for the precursor to Essential as well. Is that right? No.
Well, the SEC in Victoria, slow, easy and comfortable.
Right.
And then I went to when we were bought by the Americans in Victoria, then back to sunny Queensland.
And he's now a consultant. He does different work for different people, and is best known and most endeared to us at Solar Citizens as the consumer advocate, and always loves to get in a tussle and advocate on behalf of consumers. So please welcome Mike Swanston.
Thanks, Reece. I'll stand up. Sorry, the sugar from lunch has kicked in from whatever those couple of biscuits at afternoon tea, so I apologise for that. Thank you very much for the opportunity of coming along and saying good day, and I appreciate you coming along too, on such an important and amazing technology and conversation. As Reece mentioned, my background is power systems engineering. In fact, today is, to the day, my 12-month celebration or wake or whatever of leaving 33 years in the power industry. I've been gone for 12 months now, most recently when I left Energex as Executive General Manager of Customer Services with Energex here in Brisbane. It's an amazing industry, and I've got a lot of time for the power industry, but I've got to sort of confess my toes were curling over and scratching the heels of my feet with some of the comments when we got fairly passionate about those bastard distributors, because for a long time, distributors have done all the things that they thought were basically right. You know, they're pretty honest and straight up and very clever people. The mere fact that we could turn up today, even though there's solar on the roof here, and naturally expect, regardless of the weather, we could turn on every light, we can turn on heaters, we can plug in things we wanted, not have any concern about whether there's enough capacity or whether the batteries are big enough, isn't a test to that the old industry did what they thought they could do, and they did it pretty well. The whole issue about now, and this is where this whole conversation of disruptive technology comes from, is that things are changing, and it's very hard to turn the Queen Mary at 90 degrees. It really is tough for a whole bunch of reasons. Not so much one that they just like going in that direction, and the fact that having to turn is going to be a big ask, technically, socially and commercially. And I suppose if there is some anger to be directed to distributors, but that's my passion, of course, as distributors, is that half of the bill really, is more about the difficulty and frustration and delay of actually trying to turn the Queen Mary around a little bit. And most of that's what my talk is about today, and I'll try and squeeze it up as quickly as possible, because those that know me know that I can talk under wet cement with a mouthful of marbles. Okay, let's make a go. You know, I like looking at the plus side of things occasionally, and the story ain't that bad. Feed-in tariffs were crazy. I was working with Energex in those days. It's my signature on the bottom of the network connection approval of 300,000 people in Brisbane that have got solar connected, and I signed the approvals. God knows I know it's not that bad, but still we're doing okay. I've just done some work for the Queensland Government looking at removing obstacles for connecting more solar power to the grid, technical, commercial and social, and this is some of the stuff out. I'm sure they won't mind me using it. But you look at Queensland over here on the left, this is just in the last 2 years. So this is post the craziness of feed-in tariffs and the market distortions of feed-in tariffs. But things aren't too bad. There's still healthy growth of PV in Queensland. People are still putting it on, as Brian said. There is still a logic against plain old ordinary electricity prices, that being able to use power in a place where you can self-consume it and save you buying it at 25 or 28 cents a kilowatt hour from the street is a sensible and logical thing to do. The price has got to the point where there is a high degree of just logic in using energy. Now, of course, the conversation this morning highlighted that commercial energy on demand tariffs still just doesn't fit, and that's something that we've really got to get our head on. And the other thing with the growth rates, of course, you compare us to the rest of the world. The only place that's ahead of us, and it didn't really come out that right, but anyway, that's my PowerPoint skills, I apologise. But Hawaii is the only place that's got a higher per capita growth in solar PV in the last 2 years. And the reason for that is Hawaii hit the brakes, because they suddenly found that their voltage was going crazy. Luckily, Enphase, came to the rescue. Just ask Enphase, and they'll tell you that they adjusted all everyone's inverters and everything got fixed, and now Hawaii's going back like there's no tomorrow. And so Hawaii is still growing very fast, but good old Queensland aren't doing too bad either. But here's the problem. This is the various states in the last 2 years and the growth rates and installation of solar, and you can see it's dying an unnatural death. Now, there's a bunch of reasons for that, and part of the work that I've been doing lately is to try and find out, well, what is driving that unnatural death and what can we do about it? And there's a bunch of reasons for it. There's the fact that the market is saturating. People who could put solar on the roof, who are homeowners with their own roof that isn't shaded, we're getting a pretty good penetration of that sort of stuff now. And now we're moving into the harder stuff like renters and rental accommodation, small businesses, all those sorts of things. But all that's falling over, and of course that's why we're having this conversation today, is what the heck can we do about that? Now, my colleagues are very bright and clever people. I've got a huge amount of respect for the electricity industry, despite the fact that, they're having a bit of a struggle at the moment with thinking about the new world. I saw this the other day, and I don't know if you've gone. If you really do need a laugh, go to hellogrid.com.au. I laugh. It's the Energy Networks Association's website that says, please like me. That's basically how it goes. It's their response. But there was a lovely report in there about how the networks are doing some wonderful, wonderful things. And this graph came up, and this is my colleagues at Energex, where they've decided if you switch on the off-peak hot water systems through the middle of the day, it soaks up all the excess solar power and stops the voltage going crazy. And this actually made one of the highlights in these 10 top points. And I thought, great idea, techos, love it, managing the voltage. But the crazy thing is, you think about what's happening in the middle of the day here, is for about 150,000 people with solar on the roof, they're sending it out through the tariff 11 or the bi-directional meter and getting 6 cents for it. Then it goes through about 4 inches of red wire. Then it goes back in through the hot water meter, which they're paying 19 cents for. So for absolutely doing nothing, it's costing the customer 16 cents a kilowatt hour. And so we used to have a technical term in networks when someone would come us to say that, and you'd go, oh shit. But I thought the reason I put that up was because gold plating annoys the crap out of me. I've been a strategic planner in the distribution industry, I've been executive general manager, and not once did we invest in network because it was going to earn us more money. I can tell you that, not once did we. It's too slow. You go and borrow $40 million to build a power line through Paul Casbolt's place, and you don't get the money back. You only get it back at 6, or it's now 6%, not 9% like was said this morning, but 6%. So it takes you years to get the money back. If the government really wants money in a hurry, which what governments want, they get you to revalue your assets or shift some debt around or something. What did happen though, and this is where I just want to skip forward to it. I'm going to miss that. I'm going to run out of time, so I won't go there. What did happen? Here are my 3 issues. Okay, I'll wind up on this because time gets on. What did happen was this, and again, my PowerPoint skills have killed me. As engineers and as technical people, there is a perceived obligation that you are the saviours of energy in the community. And you are naturally incredibly conservative. Now in Queensland, we had the huge storms come through in 2004-5, and the lights went out because we weren't doing a lot of maintenance. What happened? The government threw money like there was no tomorrow. A key performance indicator in the distribution industry in one state was how fast are you spending the money. It was called run rate. But the reason behind it was this conservatism. The reason that the distributors ignored the flattening of demand and said, we're going to keep building like this, was because they were permitted to be conservative and money wasn't an issue. Now, if we're going to change as activists, one of the things that we have to change is we've got to say to the governments and the owners of distributors, thanks, great, I'm glad you're looking out for me. I'm glad you're covering that there's enough network that if I do decide to buy 3 electric vehicles and it has 6 cloudy days, that you're looking after my interest by giving me a 60 amp supply. Thanks, but I'm not prepared to pay for that anymore. It's getting too expensive. Your conservatism, your insurance, for me, is now getting too expensive. We all make that decision with our own insurance anyway. And that's what's happening with distributors. They always say, like, I get stories, and I can tell you all these stories about customers that ring and say, my inverter keeps tripping off. And we go, well, fine. Is your inverter set to the right voltage parameters? Dunno. Okay. Have you spoken to the guy that installed it? He's gone. He was there in the fit days, now totally deregistered, don't know him, can't Google him, phone's going unanswered. And the distributor goes, well, we're left holding the baby. I'm not trying to defend distributors, but that's what was going on. And distributors tend to hold their position to say, and governments support this, that you are the backstop. Doesn't matter what goes wrong, we want you at the background to make sure that you're there to catch anything that falls through. Now, until we change that attitude, distributors are going to continue to take very conservative approaches to technical connection, to pricing, all those sorts of things. And we've got to address that core problem. And it comes down to the comment that was made in the previous session, going right back to the original cause of what's driving our industry is where we've got to make the change. So that's the first one, is this perceived permission or perceived obligation of being the last resort that distributors have and are dining out on and charging us for has to change because there's now competition. There is now a different solution. Second one, and I'm watching the timer, is you've got to watch the cowboys. All it takes is one idiot. I was talking to the guys from Clean Energy Council the other day about safety standards for batteries. And of course, everyone's looking at the nice Samsungs and the Teslas and the Powerwalls and this sort of stuff. But you can guarantee in New South Wales in the next couple of months, before the feed-in tariff or before the 60 cent stops down there, you're going to have some cowboys coming out with second-hand Telstra deep cycle batteries in a fibro box with a Chunghwa fat inverter, selling batteries for $4,000 or $3,000 or $2,000. All it'll take is one of those to go boom, and the theory behind batteries is going to be on the front page of every newspaper. So again, number 2 as a lobby group, we need to make sure that they are honourable, reasonable and well-resourced people that are out there representing us and installing things out there. Because if they're not, and you get a black mark, then you put back, if you watch the chaser, you're back 3 steps in the pushbacks and you're behind the ball. So we've got to keep an eye on these cowboys. Now the third one, and I'll finish on this, is WIFM. WIFM stands for What's in it for me. And it says, my role as a customer advocate, it's amazing you go around and stand and say, what's driving this person? What's going through their head? What's influencing them? This little pile here is where distributors get money from. This is out of the Australian Energy Regulator determination, and it's in every distributor's determination. Energex, for instance, just got another $7 billion for the next 5 years to run and operate their network. But the crazy thing is how that money is built up to their hip pocket is return on capital, which is actually your capital value of your asset multiplied by the WACC, the weighted average cost of capital, which is a return on your investment, plus depreciation, plus how efficiently you're running your network, plus some ups and downs and some tax. Not one of the things that drives a distributor's back pocket has anything to do with the energy that flows through the wires. Forward, back, sideways, up, down, or a big hole in the middle, who cares? They don't. Now, I'm not criticising distributors for that, but that's how it is. So when a distributor says, I'm not really, I'm going to give you all these technical reasons why you can't connect, or I'm going to go and play with batteries for a while, the reason is they have no WIFM. Until we have the regulatory change in the National Energy Framework that makes distributors want to be fascinated in how well their networks are being used. I used the analogy the other day to a bloke from the AMC, and I said if networks were a cruise company, you'd have the best ship on the seas. It'd be best maintained, optimal paintwork, the right staffing ratios, the best kilometres per diesel used, all benchmarked, beautiful. The only problem is for 9 months of the year there's no bastard on the boat. But they don't care because their revenue is not attached to how well the asset is used. So all this forward and back, whether we should use local energy trading, all these changes that we've got to see in the framework that makes solar and renewables all very sensible, is not going to be a point of fascination for any distributor. It'll be a grudge purchase until the rules change. So we've really got to come back to how the framework of how distributors are actually encouraged to run their business. Now, I'll end with a point called tariffs. Now, every state has now put out their tariff structure statement, which is their vision of how they're going to cut the price, cut the pie, the price pie. The way it works, every distributor gets allowed by the regulator a big chunk of money. Like I say, Energex has got $6 billion for the next 5 years. And stage two is they divvy it up and say, right, where am I going to get that from? Which sort of customers? Now, in the residential customers, they go, I've got to recover $3.5 billion. How do I charge mum and dad and the little shop down the corner? There's a huge fascination at the moment for increasing fixed charge. Now, it's called all sorts of things. It's called minimum demands charge. It's called network supply charge. It's a dangerous thing. It's useful. You can do it. You can say, right, there's some fixed charge to be connected, but you've got to be careful with this fixed charge for a couple of reasons. The first one is, it'll be like my water bill. Once you pay such a high level of fixed charge, you don't give a shit how. You are somewhat ambivalent to how much you use and when you use it, which goes completely against the message the distribution industry has been giving around for the last 40 years about peak demand. Because if the actual pricing and timing signal's weak compared to the fact that I've just connected, you don't care. Now, the thing is, we should bring that fixed charge down so that the grid can be your standby generator. You know, if you think about it, if I'm off-grid, but it's very lovely to just have a little wire out to the street there, because if I'm off-grid anyway, I've probably got a standby generator I've invested $1,500 in anyway. So if I'm prepared to pay $10 a month or something, just to be connected to the grid, just there if I need it. That's sensible pricing. But from distributors, they're heading down the direction that says it costs me $100 million a year to run my network. I've got 1 million customers, I charge them all $100, I've got my money. Low risk, no problem. But by crikey, you just watch. In 10 years' time, there'll be another huge peak in peak demand, all that sort of rubbish, because we've stopped sending the right signals. But we need some tariff reform, because when it comes to justifying batteries or solar, whatever, it's all about what's the cost of the alternative. And if distributors bring in a decent, reasonably priced demand tariff or time of use tariff, call it what you like, then that will encourage people to do the clever things. Like I'm ashamed. I've got 5 kilowatts on my roof. I send out 35 kilowatt hours a day out to the street, and I get paid to send all that money out at a time when no one needs it. It's a bit embarrassing, but that's how it is. If there was a new sort of tariff around that encouraged me to, like I say, send it out tonight or tomorrow night or in the evening or whatever, and it made sense, economic sense to me as the investor, then all means, let's do it a big tick. So tariff reform sits down here in the WIFMs. So they're my 3 big issues of why I think distributors are in the way. They're nervous about the cowboys. They're the self-imposed last resort with no cost constraint or minimal cost constraint. And the third thing is the framework doesn't give them an incentive to want to be part of the solution. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks so much, Mike. Always fantastic to get a different point of view. And the WIFM concept, I think Jess Hill kind of raised it in her keynote speech, something for us to keep thinking about in terms of how we reimagine the future. We need to think about the interests of other parties if we're going to get there with the least possible fight, but still prepared to have one, perhaps. Next up, we have another panellist with some considerable experience in the industry. Stefan Jarnason is the CEO and co-founder of Solar Analytics. He has been a pioneer in the development of the PV industry for over 18 years. And today he's going to tell us a little bit about some of the grid dynamics that happen behind your meter, and perhaps some insights from him as to what constitutes a smart grid.
Thank you very much, Reece.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank you very much. So what I'm actually going to talk about today is I'm going to lead on from what Mike said, and I'm going to basically tell you about what I see as the future of our grid. And for the faster that is going to come, It will come faster when we get the tariffs right, exactly as Mike said. That is our greatest challenge towards getting to our energy democratisation, and it's the one we have right now. I'm also going to tell you that it's too late. How quickly, how slowly we do it, it doesn't matter. That train has left the station, and I'm going to tell you why. So, first of all, solar is the future of energy. I'm not just saying that because I'm preaching to solar citizens here. This, in my opinion, is just fact. Better technology will win in the end. So if you look at that in Australia, as you can see, we've now got 1.5 million. I think we've heard that number a lot of times, 5 gigawatts, huge amounts of residential solar. 20% of homes have solar, or 20% of people are living under solar. What Bloomberg New Energy says is that, in fact, this is going to continue and accelerate. So this is specifically for Australia, and what it's driven by here, you can see, is residential solar and flexible capacity. To get there, we do need the distributors and the networks to change their tariffs. The fact is, everyone in this room and all the homes around Australia are going to drive that. They will follow. They won't lead, they can't lead. They will follow. And everyone here is going to make them follow. And Bloomberg says this, the IEA says this, AEMO says this, the Minerals Council even knows this is true. That's right. How do we know this is true? Because we see what's happening. So Tesla announced their battery last year. They'd never built one. They just announced a pretty picture. Elon Musk got up there and said some things, no marketing. How long do you think it took him to sell $1 billion worth of his batteries? Anybody want to guess? 2 weeks. 2 weeks with no marketing, no product, hasn't even built the factory yet. He sold $1 billion worth. Guy's a genius. He didn't do it because it's a great product. It's no better than a heap of other products. He did it because of the demand. And guess where the demand is strongest? Guess where they're all coming? Australia. This is a suburb. Anybody recognise this suburb? Anybody recognise anything about this suburb? Got lots of... Every one of those circles is a solar system. You probably know this suburb. It's Caloundra.
Is it? Caloundra.
Yeah. Why? It's clean, it's simple, it's cheap, and we like it. Maybe we're doing it because we're sticking it to the man. Maybe we're doing it because it's good for the environment. Maybe we're doing it for financial reasons. We're doing it for all of those reasons. People love solar. That train has left the station. Every solar system will have battery. Every battery will have a solar system. That'll come. That's just a market mechanism. Landlords, if you can do it cheaper and better, people will do it that way. Exactly. It'll come. There is, however, a problem. Now, first of all, a confession. I run a company called Solar Analytics. I'm about to give you a shameless plug. So for those of you who don't like advertisements, go look at your mobile phone or something. Okay, there is a problem. Solar systems are great. However, there's one there. You have no idea if it's working properly. Absolutely none. I found this back out in 2011 when I put one on my own roof. I spent $1,200 getting the best solar monitoring there was on the market. The next day I sat in my office, engineer, 15 years of PV experience. Not many people know more about solar than I do. I pulled up the data. I had no clue. I had no idea how it was working. So we formed a company to fix that problem. I couldn't tell you when it needed cleaning. I couldn't tell you how much I was losing due to shading. My neighbour was just building an extension. Was that going to cause a big problem for me? I had no idea. Inverter failure. There might be some inverters around in Australia that have over 100% failure rate. Think about it. They're under warranty. You can get them replaced for free if you know about it. I've talked to people personally who've had the inverter off for 2 years and they've been on a 60-cent feed-in tariff. Thousands of dollars it cost them. Oh, that didn't work. Basically, they're throwing away money. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of reasons why your solar system won't work. Our purpose as a company we're all solar believers at our company. We want the world to be powered by solar energy. We want to be part of that future where 50% of the world's energy or more is generated by locally produced solar energy. So that's our purpose, and the way we do that is by maximising the value that you get from your solar system. So we do this, we put in a little monitor, I've got one here if anyone wants to have a look at it, and we monitor your live data. By doing this, we can tell you lots of interesting things about how much you're using solar, do you need to fix it, whereabouts in your house are you using the energy. We can help you diagnose faults for you, tell you exactly what's wrong, what you need to do, help you shift your load, and tell you when is the right time to install batteries. Because if you're on a 44-cent tariff, now is not the right time to install batteries. If you're in New South Wales and you're about to lose your tariff, yeah, it might well be a good time next year to put it in. But we can tell you exactly based on your particular personal circumstances. Okay, my plug's over now. You can all pay attention again now. The battery boom, it is coming. It absolutely is coming. Why is it coming? Well, I'll tell you why it's coming. Because all these people believe it's coming. These companies don't spend billions of dollars for altruistic reasons. They're not doing it because they believe in climate change. They're not doing it because they're good people. They're doing it because they want to make a lot of money. That means they want to sell a lot of batteries. The only way they can sell a lot of batteries is to make them cheaper and better. It will happen. Mobile phones were thousands of dollars to start with. Now they give them away free in your cornflake packets, just about. Right? They can make them for $50. Batteries are coming and they're going to get cheaper and better. Why? Because of this. First of all, I want to apologise. I don't know what's wrong with the Apple, but the pictures that are supposed to hide don't hide. So if the slides are confusing, I'm blaming the technician. Sorry, Reese. Works fine everywhere else. No, it's not you, Mike. Just want to say it's the technology. But basically, look, it's not just Tesla. It's Mercedes. It's everyone's getting into electric cars. And if you put an electric car in your home, well, guess what? You've already got storage. And if you've got storage in your home, well, guess what? It's cheaper, smarter, simpler, simply better all round to have storage solar on your roof. People will do it. I know you showed the graph that said solar is decreasing. I'm going to accuse you of doing the graph slightly wrong because the last point was down because it was December. We're always low in December. If you actually look at the trend over the last couple of years, basically it's flat. There is a very slight decrease. We're doing 150,000 systems every year in Australia, and that will continue and probably pick up again. Solar is absolutely the future. But there is a problem with the tariffs, as Mike mentioned, and that is having a flat tariff is not even vaguely reflective of what it costs to produce the electricity and to have it available. As you said, your boat is only available 9 months of the year, the boat is empty. So if you're running an intelligent system, what do? You make it cheaper at those times of the year when people don't want to get on the boat. And that's what you do with their electricity system. And that's what they want to do all over the place. There's a problem with that, though. There are, in fact, 4 types of energy meters. You might not know this, Mike. This might be news to you. There are 4 types. Okay, you know the first one. That's a basic meter, a basic accumulation meter. Okay. How many meters do you have in Queensland? Yep, so you've got about 2.5 million, right? How many are these basic meters that can only tell you, after 3 months, the total amount of energy you used? You can watch them going backwards. Oh, that's because you've got solar on the roof. Don't tell him that. Shh. Don't give him your address. Yeah. All this one can tell you, you can't do any sort of intelligent tariff on this because all it can tell you is every 3 months when the person comes around and reads your meter, the total amount of energy you used. It has to be a flat amount. Then you've got the interval meter. Yeah, the interval meter. The interval meter is a little bit smarter. It will collect data every half an hour. The problem is it just keeps the data. So the guy's still got to come around every 3 months and measure it for you. So then you can have a time of use tariff, but you can't see it live, they don't know what's happening, and they've still got to send someone around to get it. Then you've got the smart meter. They've rolled out, 800,000 of these, or millions of these in Victoria. It hasn't been a big success. But they do exactly the same thing as an interval meter, except they also have communications in them, so they have a modem, so they can send you the data, or send the electricity retailer the data, typically once a day, and they'll get you half-hour data. That's all well and good, but it still doesn't help do anything smart. What you actually need is an intelligent meter. What an...
Same colour as your shirt.
I know. Coincidence. It's a pure coincidence. What an intelligent meter does, it gives you live data, live 5-second data. So you can see what your appliances are doing. You can see what's happening now, not yesterday. This is not just designed to send you a bill. This is designed to help you better manage your electricity so that companies like us, like Reposit Power, like Habitat, like all of them, can offer you services via your smartphone to better optimise your use of energy. They can give you advice. They can help you control your energy. They can help you sell it to your neighbour. They can help you sell it down the street. They can help you sell it back to the grid. They can help you consume it on site. They can tell you when to move your pool pump. All those sorts of things. To do that, you need an intelligent meter. Hey, look, it worked. Faded. So what does all this mean? Oh, sorry, going back to this. Here we go. How many of those 2.5 million metres, Mike, are basic meters? Oh, they're disappearing. Hey, quickly.
In South East Queensland, 2.5 million of those, 2.5 million metres, there are about 700,000 million 1000s.
Yep.
Every solar installation in South East Queensland since 2009 has actually got exactly what you said, a meter that's recording half-hour slices. The only problem is it goes nowhere.
Precisely.
At the end of it, which is really sad.
Yeah.
There's 350 bugger all smart meters in the residential. Most of the 7 cities are in larger commercial.
Yeah. Residentially, just talking residentially, my numbers are basically 99% are basic, 1% are interval, and 0% are smart. Actually communicating where you can actually see the data.
Class basic is a type 6, which means
Yeah.
accumulation red. Both those two fit into type 6, which is accumulation.
Correct. So the dumbest of the dumb. Basically, sorry, Queensland. New South Wales, very similar statistics. We are so far from a smart grid, it's not funny. However, we will get there. We will get there, and we'll get there because batteries will drive the change. They will force the change. And it will be driven by people like you in the room. Right now, over 90% of our energy, 95%, is generated remotely, transmitted over the power lines and to the homes. Our future grid, and you're going to talk about this in a minute, our future grid is actually going to have more than 50% of our energy generated locally and sold locally. And the interesting thing about that, exactly as Mike said, is that in our future grid, our local Energixers and so on who are distributing the energy, they've still got a business model. They can still sell the energy from you to your neighbour, and they still make a decent clip. The only ones who are really dying dinosaurs who are gone are the remote coal-fired generators.
You've got to get rid of those power energy retailers.
Maybe they'll become good beasts. I doubt it, but you can always hope. They really don't have any say in what happens anymore. It's gone past them.
They're doing nothing to get paid.
We're going to have time for Q&A after this. We've got to move on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Stefan. Our last speaker today is Kacey Clifford. We've heard a lot today about the theory of smart grids, disconnected grids, but today we're going to hear from someone who's making it happen. Kacey Clifford is one of the people spearheading the project to take the New South Wales town of Tyalgum off the grid, and you might have heard and seen Kacey and her team and community's efforts, which has been quite widespread in the media. Kacey's going to tell us a little bit about, importantly, the campaign and the efforts and inspiration behind the community in Tyalgum's campaign and where it's up to now. So thanks, Kacey.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a different take on things. Basically, my experience in this industry is fairly limited. I have only sort of been involved in the renewable energy industry for about 18 months now, and it started with this project. And so what I'm going to talk about is the social side of things and the social solution associated with taking a town off the grid and having it run by renewable energy sources, obviously. So, yeah, I'll give you a bit of an introduction. Tyalgum, for those of you who don't know, is in northern New South Wales. We have approximately 120 households, and we have 5 larger businesses that mainly consume most of the energy during the day. The village has a northerly aspect, which is great for solar, and it's previously been shown to have a really, I guess, a massive support for environmental and sustainability issues as a whole. I think many of you in the room must have heard about the fracking blockades and stuff that occurred down in the area, and Tyalgum was one of the first towns to have the lock the gate. The entire community have that on their sign as you come into town. So the other benefit we have is that Tyalgum actually exists on the end of the grid. The whole high voltage lines run straight past the town, and there's one transmission line into the village. So it'd actually be really simple, in theory, to cut that line, I suppose. So basically, this is myself and Andrew Price. We're the 2 people that have, I guess, developed the concept and taken the project through to this point. And it's really important because I don't have any of the technical knowledge that the 2 other speakers have. And most of my experience has been in the community engagement and solving the social solution. So I just thought I'd make that very apparent. So I wanted to talk to you today about the concept and how it came to be, and our feasibility study and the numbers, what we've come up with, the way forward, where we're at, and how we've got so far in so little time, seeing that we've only been running the project since September 2014, and in developing a social solution, not just for our town, but for others. We want this to be replicated. We want to share knowledge and have this happen in other towns. So like as I said, the project became active in September 2014. Andrew Price, who happens to be my boss, we work on another company together, came to me and said, I've purchased this property in Tyalgum, I want to turn it into a natural energy centre, and I want to take the entire town off the grid. Go away and see what you can do with that. Basically, since then, so the first place I went was to the community. I contacted the community organisations and I went to them and I said, I have a concept that I'd like to introduce to you. I think you're going to love it. And I gave them a brief rundown, and I held a community meeting that night, 4 hours later, to 40 people in the community who were extremely positive and provided solutions and suggestions with 4 hours notice. So it basically got started at that point. In 2015, we successfully received a $15,000 grant off the state government. And we basically were able to fund Energy for the People and Craig Memory from the ATA to come and do a feasibility study. Energy for the People produced the feasibility study with a roadmap for the way forward, and Craig gave us a report on policy and regulatory issues that we may come up against, but it was relatively positive also. So these are the numbers that they came up with in the report, which is actually pretty exciting because it's actually really achievable. So as you can see there, we spend approximately $700,000 to $750,000 a year on electricity. We gathered a few, that's only a sample of the population obviously, and currently we've installed energy meters into, for memory, 3 businesses and around 20 houses in Tyalgum to get a better indication of that data. And basically, if we were to take it, so there you go, $385,000 a year on network services. And that's the breakdown if you wanted to know between business, residential, and all the other little parts. So basically this is what that came down to, is that approximately 1.5 hectares was all we needed if we had no solar on roofs to take the entire town and have it run on renewable energy sources. which I believe Tosh actually had this put right here, fit quite nicely in this little block of land here, but we didn't want to freak people out and assume that we'd already found a spot for it, so we put it over to the side. So basically, 2.7 megawatts of solar power and 2.7 megawatt hours of battery storage would get us off-grid. Achievable. The costs of that were also very achievable. So basically, we had a net cost of $3.5 to $4 million to take Tyalgum to zero net emissions and largely self-sufficient, saving approximately $580,000 a year. To be completely self-sufficient, using at least 90-95% of the solar and using no electricity from the grid, the cost would range from 6.5 to 7.2 based on the current technology. But as that's going down, we're expecting that will drop. So this is our roadmap, and this is, I suppose, where most of this, I guess, how we've run the project in terms of the social solution and solving that comes into play. So this is our phases as we go through them, and you can see that there's a lot of emphasis on how we get the community involved. We believe this is the key. I'll go on to this a little bit later, but basically, that is our mainstay of our project. We believe that the technology solutions that people are coming up with have been solved and are going to continue to be solved because there's a lot of people working on that. What is unique to every community is how we bring the community together to agree to all this, to agree to allow us to put solar on their roofs or put a solar array in their farms or whatever it is. You know, we have to have some certain level of positivity and support to be able to make that happen. So just to finish up on where we're at the moment, we've had lots of further community discussions and we make ourselves available at every possible opportunity to talk to the community. We've started to approach the subject with Essential Energy. We've been doing some talks through Energy for the People. They've been doing some talks with us and putting us in touch with the right people. We've decided that we're going to go and put as much solar on roofs behind the meter as possible, starting now, and by the end of this month, one of the businesses in Tyalgum will have solar on the roof. We've gained their support, and basically the way that's going to work is once we start putting the solar on the businesses, we're going to use the savings. They've committed to reinvesting the savings that they have, a certain proportion of it, back into a community fund that will then allow us to go and put solar on the roofs of the residents. We've gone ahead and got the development approval for the Natural Energy Centre, which will begin hopefully in the next month. We only got approved last week, which was really great. It's another step in the right direction. And we'll be able to use that as a base for people to come and ask questions, for tourists to come and find out information, and to basically promote the project as a whole. We've gone ahead and got electric bikes. Dyson sponsored us and gave us a really good deal on some electric bikes, which we're going to hire out to promote electric vehicles. We also want to get an electric vehicle, but we also want to get an electric charging station, so that'll all come soon enough. As I said, the first solar installation will be done in the next month, so that's all positive. So how have we got this far? Considering we've only been going since September 2014, and here I am speaking to you now with no further experience in the industry, it's pretty interesting to note that, you know, there are a lot of other people out there trying to do this, and yet here I am. So our focus has been on the social solution, not the technology. At no point has that been our focus. We've certainly been doing research in the background and we certainly look for different avenues as we go through, and we've spoken to different professionals. But it seems to be something that we can come across fairly easily. Someone to drive the project and to run it from a social sense and to run in community engagement, relationship management, that sort of thing, seems to be much harder. So that's what we focused on. Basically, I think that this, and Tosh spells it out pretty succinctly in his project, that the social solution is the critical enabler of the project's success. And he does, what they do so well is to appeal to people on different levels. So we built our project from the community up. I went to them at a community meeting, like I said, with 4 hours notice, and I basically stood in front of them and said, I don't have all the answers, I don't know how this is going to go, and I don't know what it's going to require from you. But I was really honest about that, and I really, I think that is shown in how quickly we progress, because they trust that we're going to do the right thing and that we're going to bring the options back to them and that they're invested in that sense, and that we're empowering them to make those decisions for themselves. So basically, the community stakeholders, including the council, have been informed right from the very beginning. Also, another thing we've sort of really focused on is having an awareness of the fact that not everyone in the community has the same motivations. Everyone in this room wants solar for the right reasons. That doesn't necessarily mean everyone in that community does. You know, some of them are just very happy turning on their lights, running their fridge, running freezers, games, whatever, and not caring where it came from. And it's really important to be aware of this when you start a project, because sometimes you can't get them to care for the right reasons. They're just not going to. So what we've done is made sure that during our, I suppose, efforts to figure out an investment model, some of that money has been set aside to be invested into drama and sports programs. And all of a sudden, if they can see the profits that are coming back out of whatever it is, whether it's these businesses putting solar on the roofs, going into other industries, not just the renewable energy industry, all of a sudden people become aware of what's going on and want to be involved, because it helps them on a different level. Whether they're kids at school and they get access to a new program and they don't really care about the solar, but if they put solar on their roof, all of a sudden their son's better off. We've appealed to them on a different level, and it's been really exciting to work with Tosh and Alex because they do that so very well. We basically made a commitment to the community, which is basically a promise. So all the community are aware that we will not go to the next stage unless we're giving them more reliable power. No one's going to be worse off in terms of price, whether it's the same or less, and we're aiming for less. And there's a couple more, but basically we've made our promise so that basically they know that at every level we're going to be reassessing it to make sure that we reach those commitments for the community. And there's no way we're going forward unless we do that. So it just makes them reassured that we're not going to put them in a worse position. And the other thing is to be honest and transparent. I think I sat at a conference last year, and they were telling me it's all about the story. It's all about the story and how you present it to people. I think it's past that stage. I think people want honesty. People are confused already, and they don't need you to be telling them a story. I think that it's about making sure that if you don't have all the answers, then be honest about it. Tell them that, be upfront. And I think that's how that you gain support and you gain momentum, and you let them also become involved in building the project with you. So this is just in case you wanted any more information on what we're doing. We don't have a website set up, but we have, you can Google us, lots of information comes up, and otherwise we're contactable by these sources. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kacey, and thanks to all our panellists. I want you to all, just for a second, stand up, please, and give all our panellists a big round of applause. I know we're going to be flat out for the next... We've got over half an hour, actually, for questions, and I know there's loads. I've got a few myself. We're going to have to wrap up just before 5 for technology to transfer over to the main plenary. But I wanted to kick off the discussion by asking a question of our panellists. What you talked about, Kacey, is really, really inspiring and is, symptomatic of lots of the issues that we've covered around network gold plating and the failure for, as Mike has demonstrated, some of the reasons behind why there's old thinking with our electricity sector. It's served us well up until now. But I wonder whether our panellists think this idea of the community going off-grid completely and being self-resilient is the ideal outcome, or whether it wouldn't be better that the community generates its own power and yet is still connected to the grid so it can share that abundant extra solar resources, and whether there's discussion of that, and whether essential energy have been responsive in all of this, and whether, why wasn't it their role in the first case, I guess, to come up with this idea. So maybe Kacey and all our panelists can talk to that idea of sharing the renewable energy that a community gets off their butts and creates in the first place.
So we actually have had this discussion. There's a couple of reasons why we think that the end goal is to go off-grid. Number one, I think that it's time that a statement is made. and a lot of the community members believe the same. They want to make a statement that we have that freedom, we have that ability to do that, and I think that that sort of sets a precedence. Many of you might know we actually have a new energy retailer in the area called Nova, a local energy retailer, and they've actually approached us about buying our renewable energy and remaining connected to the grid. So this conversation has come up. We haven't got to the point where we made that decision yet. And I think basically because we're installing everything behind the meter, once we get the system in place and the storage and the backup generator, the biogas generator that we're looking at putting in, then I think that question really has to go back to the community. It's not a decision for us to make. At this point, that's where they're leaning, is that statement of making that statement of cutting it off, just because they believe that we should have that freedom. But certainly it's been discussed. We've just got to see. I mean, the other aspect of it is dealing with the money we get back and how the community wants to deal with that. That's another level on top of the management of the energy that we would have to sort of sort out to make sure that they ran efficiently. And certainly if it runs at profit, you've just got to be careful of how that profit is spent and how the community is able to negotiate that between themselves. So yeah, we'll make that decision when it comes to it, and it won't be mine, it'll be the community's. So.
When I first started the industry many, many years ago, the chief engineer was a guy called Benjamin Franklin. The Kiwis, bless their cotton socks, had a model, a social model of trust powers, or various trusts, where the local electricity distributor, generator, owner, retailer was a single body, which was a trust. And that trust reflected the fact that energy was an enabler to the overall community. And of the funds that were recovered through the trust, for instance, I know in some place, Gisborne or Whakatane or somewhere, they bought they used the profits to buy a new X-ray imaging machine for the local hospital. This whole idea of the community ownership of energy as an enabling power for the local community, the broader depth of the local community, is an interesting way that the wheel is turning, and we're coming back to saying this belongs to us. I'd be really interested, like some of those numbers up there, like the 6 mil to get it across. That's 3 years of the maintenance bill of the power line from Wollumbar. Or that's half what it would cost to upgrade that power line to increase its capacity. So the numbers there in comparison to the costs directly associated with the absolute network are really quite reasonable numbers. My two interests will be in watching this project will be when will Essential come to the party and say, we're only moving power from that block now the corner, or wherever you choose it, to the customer's house, but we're still charging a distribution use of system charge, which reflects the power coming from Liddell and the Hunter Valley, but I'm only moving it 200 metres. That'll be an interesting one. Of course, the real change is coming. The second one, and it's a question, when will customers get a line of sight to what their new bill might look like?
So there's a couple of things there. We are actually starting the conversation with Essential Energy about, number one, buying the network. So they won't actually, if that goes ahead, we will provide the distribution and we'll have that. The idea is to have trained people from the community there, which would run probably most likely out of the energy centre. So it may not be a case that Essential Energy do that, so we won't have that charge on the bill. And the other option is if they won't come to the party at all, then Andrew's quite an entrepreneur and wants to dig up the road and put his own network in, which is...
We had that, it was called bypass networks the other days. Yeah, it's not a new one.
Which actually the Tyalgum community is completely for, because they hate the sight of the power lines. So they're pushing for that. It obviously does then make the costs go through the roof a little bit, but they really would like that. And I guess the bills, we are looking at how we're going to structure that, but that is something we're going to take back to the community. We would like to set some money aside, even if it was just run as its own microgrid, to an upgrade fund, so that basically the whole town could upgrade, you know, I guess in phases over a certain period of time. And then any extra money would be sort of divvied out for community funds. But we're not looking to make any profit. I would rather the community didn't make any profit at this point for that. It's just difficult to sort of... But the bill structure we haven't sort of gone through yet.
So exciting.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions now. If you could just ensure you try and keep, if you have a comment, attached to a question rather, and also state your name and where you're from, what interests you might, whether you're a member of Soul Citizens or whatnot.
Okay. Really quickly clarifying question. Sorry, Amanda Carl, Centre for Social Change, involved also in the Byron Zero Emissions project. So it's really great, the Tyalgum. I just wanted to ask you a little bit, can you say a bit more about your own organisation? I must have missed that. Who are you when you're talking about you and Andrew, and what's your relationship with the community?
So Andrew and I he owns the company Australian Radio Towers. We actually don't, apart from funding the project, up until this point, anything that we need to do, he sort of funds. There's no real association there. It's just that we both work there, and he sort of came into me and said, I want to do this. I think you're the right person to be involved. And Tyalgum is where Andrew lives. So he's a resident of Tyalgum, and also we have the buttery now and the general store. So business owner in Tyalgum and a resident of Tyalgum. That's right.
My name's Chris. I'm from Repower Shoalhaven down the coast, New South Wales. And question for Kacey again. Back in 2007, there was a company called GridX, and they were trying to do greenfield developments, I suppose. They applied for a grid exemption to the AER, who knocked it back, actually, on the basis of the network operator, I suppose, not insufficient retail competition. And so I'm just wondering if Craig's report to you guys dealt with that issue, because even if you guys own the grid, essentially you guys would either be then selling the power or having a Nova or somebody or an embedded network retailer selling that power on, if you guys have come up with a solution to that, or because if you cut that cable, maybe you don't come under the AER sort of regulatory system anymore. I don't know. It's a technical question, and so I wonder if Craig dealt with that at all in his report.
Craig's report I got 2 weeks ago and is around 120 pages long. So I've got through about half of it, highlighting terms, trying to get him to give me a little bit more explanation on things, because as I said, I haven't got a technical background. What I actually found was really what I didn't expect about Craig's report was the fact that it was really positive. He has highlighted issues and how we can get around them, and potentially what the changes are going to be and how we can get around them. So although I haven't got through his entire report yet, for a man that's pretty realistic and doesn't show a lot of excitement or optimism about things, he's very, very grounded. He was really positive that we could get through the regulatory and policy changes and as they exist at the moment, and if they change. So look, the way I see it is we've got all the right people on our side, and I don't have any concerns that we're going to, even if we have to go through and over, which those conversations have taken place. They are already set up as a retailer, they've already been approved, so that's the way we'll go. We'll just make it happen.
I suppose an obvious solution is just have community entities set up, but the question becomes if you don't get communities buying, obviously this microgrid. That's, I suppose, the scenario that you have.
Yeah, we do, and we have solutions. I mean, some of the technical solutions would be to sort of, as I said, we could, if we dig up the road and put only the power in that we need to put in to the people that want it, that's another solution. Like we have thought about that. There is certainly some ideas floating around as to what we would do, but at this point, to be honest with you, I've held probably 10 to 12 community meetings, and although I've had some scepticism, I've had no one. I mean, like what we're promising them is more reliable power. You've got to look at this. This town goes sometimes out of power 3 to 4 times a week during storm season, and that can last for hours at a time. So more reliable power, cheaper power, 100% renewable power. So when you're giving them these sort of incentives, it's kind of hard for them to say no. And what we're suggesting is that there would be no outlay in the beginning for the assets. So I've kind of had no one say no.
Jack Gilding from Tasmania. A question for Kacey. Have you had any initial discussions with financiers? I mean, it sounds like a fantastic project, and as Mike said, the amount of money is probably quite reasonable, but the capital market in Australia is not very innovative. So I don't know if you've started to explore that, possible sources of investment in it.
We've been looking at a few options. So we've been looking at setting up a foundation. Initially, that's one of the options. Andrew is actually, the reason he's not here is that he was actually in Brazil with a bunch of investors from Australia that are looking to make sustainable change in Australia. So we're talking to the right people. I've got Alex and Tosh who work on crowdfunding. Basically, we've just been exploring every avenue. And we've got the community also that have sort of said, not only will I put solar on my roof, but I want to see this happen so much, I'll find another disadvantaged household and pay for that one too. And then we've got the option of the lottery system, which is basically that we put it on the businesses, and Andrew's willing to absorb that cost, put it on all the businesses in town, and basically once they reinvest the certain percentage of whatever that may be, 50% of their savings back into the community fund, that goes on then to fund the residences. And then they put in 50% of their savings, and this continues for a period, and we'll be able to put solar on all the roofs.
Hi, Kacey, another question for you. I'm sorry, talking a lot. My name's Kate. I'm from Sydney, the Nature Conservation Council of New South Wales. And we are just about to embark on an energy efficiency project in Coonamble, out near Dubbo in northwest New South Wales. And also a conversation is starting there around community energy. Really exciting. They want to get off grid too. I'm just wondering, with the feasibility study, was that explored at different scales or just specifically for Tyalgum?
It was done specifically for Tyalgum, but I think there's certain points there that you could use. The plan there is certainly something that you could use generically through other different communities. It's just, Tosh actually explained to me there's two ways of doing it. You can come up with a technical solution and then present it to the community and go, here you go, please accept it. Or you can take them on the ride and bring them along with you and get them involved along the way through these other one of our things is to support the community hall, which has been there for over 100 years. And so basically we're going to pay for the upgrade fees to that hall, which everyone uses. So that sort of invites people to come along on the ride with us. And it's all about, like I said, just applying the same concepts, bringing people along, and I guess getting them involved on what they're interested in. Like, treat them to something else, like I said, a drama program or a sports program. Yeah, just don't take for granted the fact that everyone's going to go, yeah, great, a solar system, that's exactly what I wanted, because that's not how it is.
I don't know if anyone has a question for Stefan's intelligent meter or Mike's not so intelligent meters. Not that you own them, you're just a fan of them.
Well, this is a question perhaps for the panel generally. Obviously, Tyalgum is out on its own. I live at the Gap. There are a few of us who live, and that I don't know whether it's at the end of a line or whether it's on a line that goes to Mount Nebo and Mount Glorious. But would it be possible to do it, or could Barden decide to isolate themselves? Is it easier to do it for an isolated community?
I think certainly in the first instance it's a positive, because the least amount of problems we have, the better. But certainly we're doing it so that we can replicate this in other towns. It just happens to be that this is where we're located, and all the things fell into place for us. But hopefully we can replicate this and it can happen elsewhere, certainly.
One thing that's going through the back of my mind is that the traditional players in the industry, retailers and distributors, won't lie down easily. So, if I was, had my black T-shirt on and I was working for Essential Energy or Origin, who bought the retail for Essentials area, I'd be offering every deal, every direct debit cost and 13% discount known to mankind to discourage those customers from going. And that could happen. Do you know what I mean? The market will respond and not lie down easily, and I'd be interested to see whether that was part of the business case. When it comes to these local things, though, it's easy in a place like this because you can chop the wire, meter it, and think of it as a private network behind it, like a caravan park or retirement village, and you've got owned assets behind it. Conceptually, it's doable. When you're living in a suburban area, there is an equivalent. You know, there is an equivalent. Why the heck we don't have out in a paddock out the back of Brookfield? Like the conversation the lady was sitting here today, I forgot her name after lunch, but was it Nikki, about, this idea about why can't we go and get a paddock out there, put 50 kilowatts of solar, and you could live 20 kilometres away and still have an investment and a vested interest in that generation of energy, provided you've got a reasonable deal for the energy, and B, you've got a reasonable deal in how you're moving that power to your house. That's where the individual arrangements will come, and hopefully we'll see the regulatory framework change to allow that sort of logic and sensibility to occur. But unfortunately the regulatory frameworks are just so complex. Like, I was just trying to think through what was being said about Tyalgum, thinking, why can't you just cut it and create a private network? And then you've got, contestability issues and all sorts of things. But conceptually, it's quite easy to do. Commamble's the same. It's on a single power line. But like I say, I don't think they'll lie down and take it easy.
Look, the fact is they've already got communities across Europe who are doing exactly that. And it's just called peer-to-peer trading.
Yes. But would the regulators here allow that?
The regulators will do what we tell them to at the end of the day. Well, look at the fixed charges. They tried to bring in fixed charges. They got squashed. They didn't get squashed because the politicians squashed them. They got squashed because you people squashed them.
Hi, Paul McCliskey from Byron Bay. Was there a sort of economy of scale in this? If an individual at Tyalgum was to go and put storage and panels on their roof, would they have actually, as an individual, paid more for the end result than the whole town has paid because there's several hundred or X amount of people doing it?
Yeah, well, we're actually approaching, I'm just drafting the email this week, to buy 200 solar panels. So we're buying them as a whole to try and get those savings. And hopefully, you would expect that if I'm buying 200 as opposed to, 12 or whatever the case may be, you're going to get a better deal for it. Just the way it goes.
Have you actually quantified that?
The way the Tyalgum residents won't actually pay for it. I'm buying 200 solar panels and we're going to put them on the roofs as we fund that through the going back through the savings from the businesses. So essentially they're only going to be paying through their savings, and whatever that percentage is, we haven't discussed with them yet, but we'll do that on the basis of seeing how much they usually without the solar panels, and we'll do it on a base-to-base basis. It's not a high-income area. It's a low-income area. They've got a lot of disadvantaged people out there, so we don't want to squash those people and see them, suffer. So we're going to make sure that that's sort of done fairly throughout the community, and we've had those discussions. We want to make sure that everyone can afford them. So essentially, there'll be no outlay if we do it the way we're considering at the moment.
I've got a question, Mike, for you. Can you explain to us what you think Essential, the local network there, might be thinking about this, or the transmission operators? What's going through their mind? Are they seeing it as a precedent or a reflection that they've failed in their duty? Would there be people inside saying, hey, we've got to get ahead of the curve and be presenting options to communities by installing, getting together with generators and installing batteries and generation? What's going through their minds at the moment? Especially also in regards to the question of whether the proposal by the community to buy the grid off, where do you think they'll go on that one?
If I was, I don't want to put words in Chris Dallitz's or anybody else from Essential's mouth, but generically speaking, the first thing I'd be thinking is, well, I'll believe it when I see it. Do you know what I mean? I'd be thinking of all the hurdles that have to be crossed, and why would someone invest, and what's the money going to be, and what's the payback, and what if there's 2 customers out of 10 aren't interested? So I'd be sitting back and saying, well, I'm not going to react in any great particular way until it actually comes and lands on my doorstep, and I've got to react. So that'd be the first thing. There'd be a lot of, yes, this will be interesting, but of course Coonamble's their territory as well, so it'd be an interesting conversation. Second one would be, how can I defer the cost of upgrade or maintenance? So there's millions of dollars tucked away on that line, the Wollumbar 8, I think it's called, that runs up into the valley and ends up at Limpenwood there or somewhere. you'd do the sums and you'd say, right, it's costing me currently $N million over 3 or 4 years to maintain that feeder. Can I defer that capital if something clever goes? The frustrating thing I see with the distributors is why aren't they in as part of the conversation now? Talking about those costs, talking about the likely deferred cost of capital augmentation, talking about the ease of shutting down that piece of wire to maintain it without having to maintain supply. There's a whole bunch of pluses, but unfortunately the networks haven't got to the point of wanting to come. I'd be surprised if Essential's spoken to anybody about that sort of thing. But really it'll be a case of, well, we're getting our money, we're getting our duos, we're getting paid. It's not going to become an issue till it happens. The regulatory framework says I can't discount that feeder, I can't charge you cheaper for that feeder, I can't drop my distribution charge for that group of customers. The regulatory framework says I can't do that. So it really be a case of I'm just waiting to see what happens, and when it happens then I'll react, which is a pity. Because the whole issue should be, they should be upfront looking for a mutually... See, it serves nobody. That grid, that town going off grid serves nobody. There's going to be 5 kilometres of unutilised asset that still has to be maintained that everyone else in Essentials area is going to have to pay for. Too expensive to pull down, but you've still got to maintain it, which is dumb. Yep. The solution is for the networks to work with the community and say, well, what's driving you? What are your problems? Is it reliability? Is it this? Is it that? Can we find a mutually acceptable solution? And this is where my disappointment in my industry comes from, is the fact that we're not upfront with the solar and the alternative energy industries and saying, how do we work together with this stuff? Why is it an us and them? That's the thing that pisses me off. How do we get from what would a distributor do to what pisses me off? Sorry.
We've got a question here.
My question is off topic to the Tyalgum.
Okay. That's good.
My name's Greg Tafe from Go Green Generation in Kingaroy. We're a renewable energy company. I'm also a clean energy regulator auditor. And I'd just like to know, is the industry really ready for the amount of home handymen that go to like JCar, buy batteries, inverters, do the whole wiring up? And another thing that's actually contributing to this is the Clean Energy Council has given out accreditation to design and install battery systems to unlicensed electrical workers. And I've already brought it up with the Clean Energy Council, and I've brought it up with the Electrical Safety Office, and I'm mainly doing it because I want to do it before someone gets killed. So, you know, is the industry ready for that?
No. It's an incredibly scary area. Solar, in the early days of solar, was frightening. You know, we saw, you know, what's the stories, Brian, whatever, DC isolators connected backwards, unearthed panel frames, all these sorts of things. It was a frightening, frightening time. But luckily, one of the things about the winding back of the feed-in tariff, if there was a lucky thing, was it shook out the cowboys and the sensible people who knew what they were doing stayed in the industry, which is good. Batteries is going to be a frightening, frightening thing, because you see, you know, lithium batteries, wonderful things if you look after them, but like stupid things, where are you going to put it? In the garage? How close to the car? What if I backed into my fully charged lithium battery things? What the heck's going to go on? How high do I mount it? How do I vent my cells? Now, luckily the off-grid world has had a good experience with batteries, so at least we can translate a lot of off-grid learnings to on-grid learnings. But battery safety is one that the CECs try to work on. But one of the pieces of work I've done with a couple of governments is that legislation is silent on this stuff. And to get legislation changed takes a hell of a long time, despite how passionate you are about it. You know, like the AS3000 didn't contemplate reverse power flow and voltage rise in customers' houses. Still doesn't. But you've got the issue now where you can, if you've got your solar on your shed out the back, you're running at 270 volts because you've got a bit of 4 mil driving back into the house to feed the thing. So it is a very, very concerning area, and that's why I actually went to the trouble in a forum such as this of people who are passionate about solar and have influence and are keen to influence, that we've got to watch the quality of the people doing the work, because if the cowboys come in where there is a vacuum of standards and do something that is dumb, chasing the cash, then it's going to screw it for all of us. You're exactly right.
No. John? We've got time for just one more question.
Yeah, question for Mike. You outlined the structure of the charges of the grid companies.
Yes.
And you did point out that there's no incentive in there to do it correctly. What's your picture of the correct structure? How does that look?
I'm a big fan of demand tariffs. We've got all these sort of tariffs and changes coming through at the moment. We had time of use. Demand tariffs is just a glorified time of use tariff. But if demand tariff's done right, what it means is the customer pays for the size and the capacity of their connection to the grid. Which means if you don't give a hoot, you want to have 16 fridges, three air conditioners and everything else all running full bore, fine. You want a big fat pipe from the grid, pay for it. That's great, user pays. If you want to be intelligent, you want to store your energy, you want to take rainwater from the roof, aka your solar, into batteries, you want to be intelligent about how you use your devices and those sorts of things, so that you just take a trickle feed from the grid 24 hours a day, topping up my batteries and let me sort myself out, fine. You should have the right and the ability to invest that capital, but at least reflect that in the cost you pay back to your network. And then, of course, ultimately is disconnecting, which I'm not a real fan of disconnect. But anyway, I think networks are driving people to want to go that way, which is a pity. But that's the way I'm... So I think demand tariffs that we're seeing, the concept of a demand tariff, which every state wants to go to, which will need a smart meter, is probably positive. It's how it gets interpreted and how the game gets played that we've got to watch and influence very closely, that makes sense and it's reasonable. Now, what that means is a fair price for the size of the pipe that you connect. The retail side is pretty fair. It's funny watching Origin and AGL all selling solar. The argument is they'd be selling green paint if it made them money. They don't care about the fact that it's solar. They care about they've got a sticky customer who signs up for 7 years and they've got an income flow on a financing arrangement. But you don't blame them for that. You know, you look in the States, 60% of roofs on solar on roofs is actually an external financed arrangement. You know, Sunrun or these big solar companies are actually finance companies. That's how they get around some of that stuff. So the shakeout of the industry into demand tariffs, sensible retail tariffs, is the thing that's ahead of us. And I think that there is hope. It's just how it gets translated and who's keeping them honest. The rules are as wide. You can park a truck in the rules, same as the pricing rules now. But how it's interpreted that's intelligent and is workable for mum and dad and the industry is a thing we've got to watch.
What's the trickle feed technology?
Oh, I don't want to take too much time, but I did a paper years ago which did an analogy of water. You know, you've got a big fat pipe coming into everybody's house. Why is it big and fat? Because once a year, grandma's in the shower, someone's washing the potatoes and someone flushes the toilet. You don't want it to be a dribble. So you've got a big fat pipe, but for 355 days of the year, you don't need that pipe that big. The electricity industry is exactly the same. We're paying for a pipe that big into everybody's house just in case. This whole, you know, conservative view of life. But if we say we're going to have water tank, aka batteries, we're going to top it up with extra rainfall off the roof, aka solar, and I've got a pressure pump which supplies my power and meets all my ups and downs and my bumps, then all I need from the street is a little tiny wire that just trickle feeds and charges my batteries 24 hours a day, only draws 500 watts, and I don't want to pay you for the fact that I've got a nice stable 500 watt demand on your grid. So long as all that economics comes through, it will work well. And the framework's there, but it's how it gets interpreted, which comes back to the WIFM, is the point that I was trying to make.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And please thank our panellists for the session this afternoon.